Something is very wrong when the nation's top law enforcement official refuses to answer the simplest ethics question. And when you watch what happened in this hearing, it becomes obvious that the thing she tried hardest to avoid wasn't the accusation. It was the truth hiding underneath it. From the first moment Representative Madeline Dean opened her mouth, the tension in the room shifted. She wasn't warming up. She wasn't laying groundwork. She went straight to the pressure point. Why did the Attorney General dodge a basic disclosure that every top official is supposed to file? The silence after that question wasn't the kind of silence you hear when someone is thinking.
The three hallmarks of this administration are incompetence, corruption, and cruelty. I'm going to focus today on corruption. And in my mind, there are two types of corruption: personal, and then the other I'm going to call public, governmental. Attorney General, have you ever been registered as an agent of a foreign principal under the Foreign Agents Registration Act?
I assume you're talking about when I represented the country of Qatar for a very short time.
The answer is yes. No,
hold
excuse
on.
me.
No,
No.
for anti-human trafficking for the World Cup. Anti-human trafficking
or
for the
no?
World Cup.
Attorney
you can't
General,
put words in my mouth.
No.
You want to talk about incompetence? You're the one that
Excuse
said
me.
Joe Biden on PBS was competent. You had to retract those words.
Mr.
So don't
Chairman,
talk to me. Don't insult me publicly.
this is so discourteous. This is so outside the committee's guidelines. Taking a personal shot at me while swiping at Biden, very strange and very unprofessional of you. The answer is yes or no, and the answer is yes. You were registered as a lobbyist for Qatar. Is that correct? Yes. Never mind, don't answer. Did you disclose that when you went before for the Senate for confirmation? Yes or no? No, it was not in your documents. The answer is no. President Trump.
This was discussed at my confirmation hearings in detail.
It was discussed, but you failed to bring up the conflict that you had. President Trump recently announced he'd accept that $400 million Qatar airplane because it was just prettier than the one he was flying around in. Is it true that you gave advice that this was legally permissible? Yes or no?
I will not discuss any advice that my Office of Legal Counsel gives to the President of the United States on any matter.
When you spoke before the Senate, you said you would ask for ethical advice. Did you recuse yourself from that issue?
And talking about unprofessional, you say the President wanted a jet because it's pretty?
Excuse
Come
me.
on, this is a Senate, this is
He
a
said it
congressional
himself.
hearing.
He said it himself. Let me go to April the 2nd. You're a part of this, the president has dabbled in meme coin. He had the DOJ, disband the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team. His son recently launched the Executive Branch Club, a private club with $500,000 memberships here in D.C. Any of this seem like it might be a problem, might be profiteering from the office, and maybe you and your ethics team might be concerned about these conflicts of interest, your own and the president and his family? Yes or no? Any concerns?
What I would be concerned about in Pennsylvania are all the child sex cases that we've prosecuted, all the CSAM cases that we've prosecuted.
Did you hear
in
my question?
Pennsylvania.
I
That's
asked
what
the
I would
witness
be
to
concerned
actually
about.
answer questions that are asked.
Congresswoman Dean.
Chairman,
Please let the witness answer the question.
she didn't. And I would like to ask you one more question. You're not just complicit in this, you're actively helping and profiting. Isn't it true that on April the 2nd, the same day that Trump announced his chaotic tariff regime that plummeted the stock market, you sold more than $1 million worth of your shares in Trump Media stock? Trump Media stock fell 13% in the following days. Seems you avoided that loss. Well done. I yield back.
May I answer that, Chairman? I complied with my ethics, and yeah, I would take a class in financial literacy if you think I profited from that, because I lost a tremendous amount of money. Congresswoman, and also on page 25 of my SJ2, it lists my involvement with Qatar for anti-human trafficking for the World Cup. Thank you.
It was the silence you hear when someone was hoping you wouldn't ask in the first place. And once Bondi finally spoke, everything got even stranger. Dean's first question was simple enough for anybody watching at home to follow. Have you ever been registered under the Foreign Agents Registration Act? It should have been the easiest yes or no question imaginable. But instead of answering, Bondi tried to wrap the moment in soft language, calling it a short-term role and emphasizing anti-human trafficking for the World Cup. She wanted to make it sound like a humanitarian exception, something so morally positive no one would dare question it. But Dean wasn't asking about the project. She was asking about the law. And the law requires disclosure. Full, unambiguous, documented disclosure. That's when Bondi's tone shifted. She snapped back, accusing Dean of putting words in her mouth. Viewers watching live could feel it. The defensiveness didn't fit the question. If it was so innocent, why avoid the yes? When Bondi finally admitted it, yes, she had been registered, the damage was already done. The hesitation spoke louder than the answer. Online observers later said the same thing. The delay felt like someone desperately rearranging the story before the truth slipped out. But if that moment felt tense, the next one felt explosive. Because Dean wasn't just asking if Bondi had registered. She wanted to know if Bondi had disclosed that relationship during her confirmation process. The single point in a public official's life where total transparency is required. And here, the answer wasn't vague at all. The answer was no. Bondi tried to insist the topic had been discussed, as if mere conversation fulfilled a formal requirement. But Dean cut straight through that. It was not in your documents. The paperwork, the part that creates accountability, had a blank space where the truth was supposed to be. And that blank space isn't just a missing line. It's a breach of trust. Confirmation hearings depend on complete disclosure so senators can evaluate conflicts before giving someone the keys to the Justice Department. Skipping that step, accidentally or intentionally, breaks the chain of integrity the public relies on. What makes this moment even more suspicious is that she didn't seem alarmed by the omission. Instead, she reacted as if being asked about it was the problem. That's when people started asking themselves a larger question. Was this an oversight or a pattern? Dean then moved to something that made the room go from tense to electric. She asked whether Bondi advised the president at the time about accepting a nearly $400 million aircraft from a foreign government. The moment those words landed, the Attorney General froze. She didn't deny giving advice. She didn't confirm it either. She simply refused to discuss anything her office advised the president on. For the public watching, this was déjà vu, another ethics question met with another wall. Transparency wasn't just missing, it was actively blocked. And what made it worse was that Bondi shifted the topic, attacking Dean's wording instead of addressing the substance. She focused on one phrase, pretty jet, calling it unprofessional. A classic pivot. When you can't answer the question, criticize the questioner. But here's the thing. Critics online pointed out the obvious. If the advice was clean, why hide it? Why fight the question instead of clarifying the facts? By now, viewers weren't just curious, they were suspicious. And Dean wasn't done. She brought up an entirely different issue, cryptocurrency. Not small, not technical, major decisions with huge policy implications. She pointed out that the president had dabbled in memecoin culture, that the DOJ under Bondi had disbanded the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team, and that the president's son had launched an exclusive private club with six-figure memberships. The timeline mattered. The optics mattered. The parallels mattered. Dean asked whether Bondi or her ethics team had concerns about these overlapping interests. Yes or no? Bondi's answer wasn't yes. It wasn't no. It wasn't even close. She suddenly began talking about child exploitation cases in Pennsylvania, something entirely unrelated to cryptocurrency, conflicts of interest, or ethics disclosures. And this wasn't an accident. This was a strategic diversion, the kind officials use when they cannot, or will not, address the substance. This redirection only raised more questions from viewers. Why dodge so aggressively? Why pretend the question wasn't asked? Why not give a single clean, direct answer? And then came the one moment that made everyone sit forward. Dean asked about a stock sale. Not a rumor, not a theory, an actual transaction on a specific date. On the same day that a major tariff announcement sent the market spiraling, Bondi reportedly sold more than $1 million worth of shares in a company tied to the administration. The timing was so tight it raised alarm bells instantly. Days later, the stock plummeted 13%. Bondi avoided a massive financial hit. Dean framed it politely. Well done. But in political language, that was a warning shot. Because government officials are prohibited from using privileged information for financial gain. And even the appearance of possible insider timing is a crisis. Bondi insisted she lost money overall. She insisted she complied with all ethics rules. She insisted Dean didn't understand financial literacy. But none of that answered the real question. Why that day? Critics online broke it down even further. If she truly lost money, why sell such a large block? Why sell on a day tied to policy chaos? Why not recuse from decisions affecting the very industry she invested in? People weren't accusing her directly. They were asking for clarity. And every time clarity was requested, she provided confusion instead. But the deeper problem wasn't the single stock sale. It was the pattern emerging across the entire exchange. Avoid, deflect, criticize, pivot, repeat. When asked about foreign registration, evasion. When asked about disclosure, deflection. When asked about advising the president, silence. When asked about crypto issues, diversion. When asked about financial timing, counterattack. This is why Dean's questioning resonated so strongly. She wasn't prosecuting political theater. She was demonstrating something larger. That transparency is only transparency when it's voluntary. And that even the highest-ranking officials in government can slip through loopholes if no one forces them to confront what they'd rather keep hidden. Bondi kept saying she followed ethics rules. And maybe she did, technically. But ethics isn't just about the letter of the rule. It's about the spirit behind it. If the public feels misled, if disclosures appear incomplete, if recusal never happens, if financial timing looks too convenient, then the trust in institutions begins to fracture. And when trust fractures at the top, it spreads everywhere beneath it. That's why this hearing mattered. It showed how easy it is for powerful people to hide behind formalities while avoiding accountability. It showed how much depends on sharp questioning and persistence. And it showed that the most dangerous threat to democracy isn't always corruption. It's the kind of secrecy that makes corruption possible. Toward the end of the exchange, Bondi tried to regain control by referencing her ethics paperwork, pointing to a specific page where she claimed her involvement with Qatar appeared. But even then, the question wasn't whether she once mentioned it. The question was whether she fully disclosed it when the Senate required it. Discussed is not the same as filed. Mentioned is not the same as documented. And I followed the rules is not the same as I told the whole truth. The public knows the difference. Dean knew the difference. And Bondi's reaction made the difference impossible to ignore. This hearing wasn't a spectacle. It was a case study. It showed viewers how ethical scrutiny works, how contradictions reveal themselves, and how much information officials will hide behind technical language when they don't want the public to see what's underneath. It's not about whether someone technically broke a rule. It's about whether the public can trust the people making decisions behind closed doors. And if this was the reaction under the spotlight, imagine what happens when no cameras are present. If you found this deep dive helpful, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. There's a lot more coming, and you won't want to miss what we uncover next.